So I don't usually do this kind of video. I think I've done it like once or twice in the past, but basically, I have seen a lot of films recently that I really want to talk about, and it's just a little bit easier for me to kind of do a video where I just kind of put them all into one video as opposed to doing separate reviews for each of them because I don't really know what to say for for that amount of time. So let's just kind of go through some of the films that I've watched recently, starting with some of 2018 films that I saw this year. And I just want to quickly give my thoughts on those. So I saw Beale Street Could Talk in cinemas, and I absolutely love that film so much. I think that it is definitely a Best Picture nominee. It should have been a Best Picture nominee. It should have been a Best Director nominee. It should have been up for a lot more awards, and I really, really love that film. I think that Barry Jenkins did something really, really special, and I feel like if he is able to keep this level of consistency going forward, he will go down in history as one of the greats because he is just such a unique voice in Hollywood. And really, no one in the Hollywood system makes movies quite like Barry Jenkins. The cinematography is amazing. The score by Nicholas Britell is amazing. The cast is just outstanding. And the reason I don't quite like it as much as Moonlight is because I think most people will agree with me that the argument scene that happens early on is probably the best scene in the film. And so I guess my one criticism is that it peaks too early. And so, like, throughout the rest of the film, I was just kind of hoping for, certain scenes and certain beats to kind of reach that height. But it never quite did, even though it was all excellent throughout. If I were to give it a grade, I'd probably give it an A. I gave it 4.5 stars on Letterboxd. You can read my reviews for all of these films on Letterboxd, really. I also saw Burning, a Korean film with Steven Yeun from The Walking Dead. Most of you probably know him from The Walking Dead. Now, I absolutely loved this film. I also saw Shoplifters, which is also an excellent film, but I love Burning more, and I think that Burning definitely should have been nominated for Best Foreign Film. I think it's better than Shoplifters. I think it's better than Cold War. Both really good films, but I really loved Burning. It is one of the most uniquely structured thrillers I've seen in a long time. It's very well acted, very well written. The sense of momentum and atmosphere created through the masterful long takes is really interesting. And I think that the filmmaking on display in Burning was very impressive, and the story alone is very, very interesting. So please watch Burning. I think it's a film that deserves a lot more recognition than it did. So I saw Vice and Green Book, which those two films, obviously, I have made it quite clear in my Oscar videos that I don't think that they deserve that much recognition. The same with Bohemian Rhapsody, which I saw this year, and those films, which is kind of, they were fine. They're perfectly fine films. I was very kind of disappointed with how generic and formulaic Bohemian Rhapsody was. Vice it had its moments, and Christian Bale and Amy Adams were very good. Nicholas Britell also did the score for that film. A great score. Green Book is just, it is a good movie. It's a good movie. And it is competently directed and it is terrifically acted. But because it won Best Picture, I feel like I'm going to like it less. And one of the films last year that I was really excited to see, that I just got the chance to see about a month ago, was The Girl in the Spider's Web. And I absolutely despised it because, despite the fact that it's not actually that bad of a film, David Fincher being one of my favorite directors, Daniel Craig and Rooney Mara being one of my favorite actors, and That Girl with the Dragon Tattoo film being one of the best mystery thrillers of this decade, in my opinion, it broke my heart to see that will never get a sequel, even though they designed it as a trilogy. And so that's why I didn't like the film, because it was just such a generic, boring, bland action thriller. Everything was competently made, but nothing was outstanding about it. So yeah, that's the last of the 2018 films, like the big ones that I want to talk about. Let's talk about some of the films that I saw in 2019, but I didn't get a chance to talk about yet. So the first one was the Fyre Festival documentary, which has been pretty popular. And of course, that meme of the guy who went into the guy's office fully prepared to suck his dick has been it's been going around quite a bit, and it is quite funny. And on top of that, the Fyre Festival documentary is actually a pretty well done documentary. It's not boring. It is actually quite interesting. And actually, speaking of documentaries, I also got a chance to see Free Solo, which was pretty outstanding as well. I really enjoyed that. But the Fyre Festival documentary, I think, was surprisingly well done. And it kind of shows actually the sort of the diversity that Netflix has to offer. That Netflix do actually kind of care about making half-decent films, as opposed to just kind of, straight to DVD releases that are put on Netflix instead of out on DVD. However, I also saw a film called Polar with Mads Mikkelsen. Now, for those of you who follow me on Letterboxd, you will know that I completely despised Polar as well. Because this film, as I said, in my review on Letterboxd, felt like it was directed by a horny 14-year-old who has no concept of editing, pace, structure, rhythm, atmosphere, or cutting together a simple conversation scene. Polar is a truly atrocious film. It is a complete and utter piece of goat shit. Mads Mikkelsen is fine. The style of it is alright, you know, because you can kind of make the argument that they are going for a really crazy, unbelievable style. But it's just so fucking bad. And it's very, very rare, actually, that I critique someone's performance. Because that's, like, the one thing I don't do, you know, as a filmmaker. I mean, I have acted before, but I don't usually critique people's performances. I just never do. But the performances in this film, with the exception of Mads Mikkelsen, were truly, truly atrocious. They're some of the worst performances I've seen in a while. The writing was annoying. The directing was so, like, yeah, like I said, it felt like it was directed by a horny 14-year-old. So I really did not like Polar. I did, however, really enjoy Alita Battle Angel, a film that has caused a little bit of controversy, you know, for some weird reason. And a film that a lot of people kind of were anticipating to not be so successful, because remember, this film was actually meant to come out April last year, and then they had to postpone it to like December, and then they postponed it to February. But I was always kind of on board for this film. I've always been a big fan of Robert Rodriguez. I've always been a big fan of James Cameron. And I really enjoyed Alita Battle Angel. I think it's a very competently made film. The visual effects are stunning. I thought the performances throughout were really, really impressive. However, I did say that in my Letterboxd review again, that one of my biggest flaws with the film was the editing. It is a really poorly edited film. There were a lot of unnecessary cuts in the film in which a pan or a tilt or a dolly would have sufficed. So that was my one big issue with Alita Battle Angel. I would very much like to see a sequel. I think that this is a very, very sort of genuine film that deserves support. It's very entertaining. It's not pretentious. It's not trying to be some big political message. It's just really fun. And you know what? I think we need more of that in Hollywood nowadays. Now, speaking of fun, How to Train Your Dragon 3, the last film I'm going to talk about, because this film actually kind of affected me quite deeply. Now, this film came out early January in the UK. I know it only came out like a week ago in America, but it came out in January in the UK, and I was not planning on watching this film at all. I don't know why. I remember rewatching both films, 1 and 2, back in October and really, really enjoying them. And when I heard the third one was coming out, I wasn't like that hyped for it or anything. And a week before I saw the film, I rewatched Kung Fu Panda, which is one of my favorite animated films, and Hans Zimmer and John Powell did the score for that film. And I really love the Kung Fu Panda score, so I looked up, you know, Hans Zimmer, John Powell, Kung Fu Panda score on YouTube. And then, you know, next to it was How to Train Your Dragon by John Powell. And I clicked on it, and I listened to that score, the test flight or whatever it's called, the big one that everyone knows. And it really, like, just hit me really hard. Like, I was just hit with nostalgia so much. And then I decided, yeah, why not watch How to Train Your Dragon 3? And when I did, yes, it is probably the weakest film in the trilogy in terms of structure, in terms of character arcs, relationships, villain. But that ending broke me, and that ending kind of... This is one of the few times where I will give a film a really, really positive review because of its effect on the other films. How to Train Your Dragon 3 made me like the first two films more. And it reminded me how important these, all three films were to my childhood, how important this series was to my childhood. Because I watched the first one when I was about 8 or 9, and I watched the second one when I was about 14. And so it really is, it has been a pretty important part of my childhood. And the third one, that ending is just really, really emotional and really impactful. I remember some people were crying in my theatre, so I really appreciated this film. I would probably give it like an A- or a B+. I really, really appreciated this film and what it did for me. So yeah, I would probably say that How to Train Your Dragon 3 is the first objectively great film of 2019, right? Because we've had some really ambitious films like Glass and Velvet Buzzsaw, which didn't work for some people. They worked for me, but not a lot of people, right? We had Alita Battle Angel, which is a fun action film, but there really isn't that much more than that. Whereas with How to Train Your Dragon 3, this is a genuine, it's a really well-made film. It is actually a great story with great characters, and I think it has affected a lot of people from my generation. So I would probably say that this is indeed the first truly great film we've had this year. But yeah, so that was just a quick recap of some of the films that I saw in 2019 and 2018 that I didn't get to talk about more in depth. So I hope you guys enjoyed this kind of video. I do feel like I will be making more of these going into the future, just because I do kind of want to put my focus more on video essays and sort of the more analytical stuff, and also kind of doing the more only reviewing films that I genuinely want to talk about, you know. And I will put, you know, I review everything I watch on Letterboxd, so if you want to see my thoughts, then go on there. But I feel like this is going to be something that's going to happen a lot more, and it is quite fun, because as opposed to just kind of having to force myself to talk about a film for, you know, 5-6 minutes, I can just kind of cram them all into one video and really, you know, get nice, short, sweet answers to each of them. So anyway, guys, thank you very, very much for watching, and yeah, thank you.